Hello, everyone, and welcome to this Goldman Sachs hosted event today. Today, we're going to be focusing on launching your technology career. And we are privileged to be hosting this panel. And before we meet our panel, I'm just going to introduce myself and give a few bits of information about Goldman Sachs and our new Birmingham office. Okay, so my name is Paul Hignett. I joined Goldman Sachs in 2006. I work in our regulatory engineering team. And I have worked in the Goldman Sachs offices in London, Warsaw, and now I'm working in Birmingham. I originally graduated in biochemistry, and then I moved over to IT and did a master's in IT. And that started my journey in Java development, where originally I was working on websites for insurance companies, including esure.com and sheilaswheels.com. And then I got my job at Goldman Sachs, and my 15-year journey started to bring me where I am today. Okay, now before we do the introductions, let me just go over a few details on engineering at Goldman Sachs. At Goldman Sachs, engineers make up a quarter of the global employees, over 11,000 engineers spread across 64 cities. Traditionally, engineers were restricted to more back office roles, but nowadays, the opportunities in engineering, both in client-facing and revenue-generating positions, are unlimited. Engineers are creating the digital business offerings that are so integral to diversifying our revenue streams. Our engineers are responsible for over 1.5 billion lines of code, and they support the execution of 2 billion trades per year. And now, Goldman Sachs in Birmingham. What are the plans here? In April, Goldman Sachs announced plans to open the new office in Birmingham, a software development hub and digital business center. The engineering division is the first to start hiring here in Birmingham, and now, along with HR and legal divisions, we're building teams too. The intention is to grow to a couple of hundred engineers in the next 2 to 3 years. In September, the GS office opened officially. It's located in WeWorks on Colmore Row. So we get the chance to enjoy the new office and take advantage and the benefits of being in the city center and enjoying good coffee, pool, and foosball in our offices. Now, with that out of the way, let's meet our panel. So, Liz, can you please tell us something about yourself?
Hi everyone, I'm Liz Walker. I look after our consumer engineering team here in Birmingham. I'm primarily a solution architect working on building out systems to support Marcus and the partnerships that we offer through our Marcus branding. I was born and raised in the Midlands. I stayed local for university. I did my undergraduate degree at Warwick and my MBA at Birmingham University. My career in tech started in 2012, actually at a Goldman Sachs event at university. When I was going to university, I was really unsure what I wanted to do. So I picked quite a broad degree of computing and business. And at this Goldman Sachs event that was hosted, I really liked the sounds of the work they were doing and the opportunities that could be offered. So I applied, did an internship with Goldman's, and returned after I graduated full-time to Goldman's working in London. I worked in core engineering, building platforms for other engineers to use, and moved to our consumer engineering team 3 years ago when I wanted to learn a little bit more about the consumer business.
Thank you. James, over to you.
Hi everyone, I'm James. I'm a software developer in GS Accelerate, which is an initiative to foster innovation and collaboration at Goldman. It provides capital, resource and support to teams to build new businesses and products with a focus on the firm's future growth. I recently joined GS in July this year, but beforehand I had 3 years experience at another software company in Birmingham. I did grow up locally in Birmingham, but moved away to a commuter village, which is about 40 minutes away, but returned to the city to study maths and physics at the University of Birmingham.
Thanks, James. And George, finally for you.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. So my name is George. So I work in the market data engineering team within our core engineering kind of division. So we're responsible for taking data both from vendors and from internal producers and fanning it out both to kind of desktop human-facing applications and headless kind of algorithms which do electronic trading. So my entry point into GS was a work placement as part of my degree. So I did an MEng in computer science at the University of Birmingham. That came about again, like Liz, through a careers event that the firm did there. It was kind of by chance, but 3 weeks later, I had an offer, really enjoyed that year, and then came back as a grad in 2017. And I've been here ever since. Before market data, I was in a team called Site Reliability Engineering, which was essentially ensuring the reliability or appropriate reliability of services at the firm, and that's very much kind of fed into my current role. So I'm almost like a site reliability engineer within market data, which is a very interesting area to be in. And outside of that, I do instructing for Code First Girls.
Thank you, everyone. Okay, so the next topic that we'd like to cover is to walk through the key technologies that are used and the skills within each of the departments that we sit in. So, Liz, let's start with your team. If you can walk us through the key technologies and the skills that are used for your day job.
Sure. So within consumer engineering, we support the firm's consumer finance offering. The key skill within my role is communication. I have to be able to work with stakeholders from across the organization to understand requirements and the impact that has on us as engineers, such as keeping the website available 24/7. So communication is really key. In terms of technology, we're primarily Java-based with a mixture of services hosted on-prem and in the cloud.
Excellent. James, over to you.
Yeah, so the product I'm working on within GS Accelerate uses Python as its server-side language, and then we define our infrastructure with Terraform and host our software in the cloud with AWS. We then have like GitLab pipelines that build and deploy our code to the cloud. I think my most important skill in my role as a software developer is being able to break down large problems that we have in the real world into smaller solvable chunks that then we can solve with code. And then I guess effectively communicating with the team.
Thank you. And George?
I think in market data, the big thing is, for context, market data as a kind of discipline tends to be fairly kind of just traditional in its tech stack, so kind of bare metal and fairly static infrastructure. And SRE on the other hand is relatively new, so kind of finding a way to combine them is the big challenge, kind of applying new techniques to arguably quite legacy infrastructure, and at the same time trying to uplift it. So there's lots of challenges with kind of taking people who want kind of total guaranteed availability and really low latency to make sure they get the latest data, and kind of managing expectations and trying to strive to get closer to them every day. I should say the stack itself is C++, is the kind of core language. The tooling we write around that is in Python, Java, more recently Go, and when we can, we run things in Kubernetes in containers.
Fantastic. Okay, so I will cover regulatory engineering. So basically, regulatory engineering is the reporting of all Goldman Sachs's transactions to the regulators. So we deal with several million transactions a day that are executed globally, and either real time or at the end of the day, we have to get all of this data to the regulators. So our primary tech stack is Java processes. We pull in vast amounts of data from a various array of different data stores, whether it's HDFS, Java, DB2, Sybase IQ, and then we process all of this data using Java and submit it to the regulators. The key set of skills is that's critical to working in regulatory engineering is to be able to work with our end users very closely. They define our requirements, and we have to effectively build our systems aligning to those requirements. So having a very good relationship and being able to understand the clients is key. Also building up a very good network across the organization. Obviously Goldman Sachs is global, and we use lots of different tools that are developed in-house, as well as standard tools that are open source. So being able to have a good dialogue with your colleagues and collaborate definitely helps us to build better software. Okay, so thank you everyone for that brief overview of the tech stacks in your department. So now moving on, many people in the audience will be looking to launch a career in technology. What would your best advice be for those looking to upskill and improve their digital skills? And James, I'll let you answer this question.
Yeah, so if I cast my mind back to when I was starting out, I was frozen. I didn't know where to start. And, you know, looking back, I don't think there is a best place to start. I think if I could summarize the sort of advice that I'd give is just build things and don't be afraid to fail. You know, digital skills is not something you can master. I'd say it's more of a craft. And like any craft, it's something that you develop and become fluent in over time. And so don't get frustrated when you can't do something instantly. I don't think there's anything fundamentally different to learning digital skills to any other craft. I think the same techniques apply. The hardest thing is to start. It's uncharted territory, it's unknown, it's scary. We're wired to procrastinate when we're starting new journeys. I think there's a few things that you can do to help speed that up though. I think if you have a plan and a timeline, so you don't fill the available time and procrastinate for a long time. Realizing that there's this sort of feedback loop with the craft. What you need to do first is try and do something. You know, can you create it? Then evaluate what went wrong and what you struggled with. Once you've figured out, you've done the test, you need to go back and evaluate and then relearn the things that you struggled with and that you found tricky, and then restart the process over and over again. And over time, as you go around the loop, you'll gain more knowledge and you become more experienced, and you'll be able to take on bigger and bigger tasks. So to apply that feedback loop, you need a bunch of opportunities. And I think there's loads right now. I don't think it has to necessarily be in tech. I think there's a bunch of businesses out there that haven't yet embraced the digital transition. Perhaps there's a small business somewhere who mostly operate on paper. Perhaps you could teach them to digitalize their files and demonstrate how to search through it in a digital way, so they don't have to manually search through an alphabetical physical file system. Maybe there's an org that spends all day on Friday generating a report following a predefined sequence of steps. Could you translate that into some sort of Python script or some code that could run automatically every Friday whilst you sip a cup of tea? Maybe there's a small business that you've worked with and there's this great salesperson who can give clients a lot of great advice, but it takes up a lot of his time. Maybe you could compile that into a digital asset and make that distributable to a bunch of prospective clients. So I think, like I said, there's a bunch of these industries that haven't yet embraced the change. And I don't think it needs to be cutting edge tech to be valuable. By taking on these challenges, you can embrace that feedback loop and over time craft your digital skills and take on larger and more complicated tasks as a result. For example, I rented an office out in a graphic design agency where I was tutoring maths and physics just after my degree in 2017. During a lunch chat, I discovered that they were having a bit of difficulty developing a membership website for a client. I mentioned that I had written a little bit of code at university in C++, not that much. Maybe I could help with the problem. I used a bunch of online resources to learn the details and figure out what was going on, and then applied it at the problem at hand. I solved it, and the graphic design agency was super happy. And later that week, they offered me a contracting role to finish the membership website. And that was my first paid role in tech. And then since then, I've been taking on these small projects and getting, crafting those skills until I eventually managed to land a job in Birmingham. And then 3 years later, ended up here at GS.
Thank you, James, for that insight. It's very useful. Now, moving on, thinking about a transition into launching an engineering career. What tips on getting the first role, whether it be internship or graduate role, would you have? And George, this question is to you.
Thanks, Paul. So I think the first thing, once you follow James's sage wisdom, the first thing is to actually believe that you have some skills, even if you don't have any kind of formal training in technology, right? So there's things that apply, sometimes even more so in tech than in other industries. So all you have to do is find them. And add them to your CV. So these can be things like managing stakeholders, teamwork. It's all it is on your CV is just to talk about the impact you had rather than what you did. It's a very subtle turn of phrase, but it changes the entire tone and makes the whole thing sound much better. And by the way, for those at uni kind of pondering an internship, 100% go for it. It doesn't really matter where it is. Personally, I can be and actually I'd say it doesn't matter where it is. Don't focus so much on the work you'll be doing, but the kind of feel of the place. Because yeah, I've found I'm much happier when I'm working, when I kind of believe in the work, than the kind of technical details. And the work changes anyway, whereas the culture tends to remain fairly constant. So I've talked about CVs. I think the other thing to say is to remember that the CV is just to get your foot in the door. It doesn't get you the entire job. So with that in mind, don't show the extent of your knowledge. Leave the reader kind of questioning how far can you go, and save that for the interview. So keep it to one page. Don't kind of reuse examples. Have one good example of teamwork. Have one good example of coding. If you've done a hackathon, that's a really good way to stand out. One thing I personally like to see is a skills matrix. So that's where you list languages, frameworks, platforms that you're familiar with, and you have 2 columns, one for proficient and one for very proficient, and you just list things in there. And that can be quite a nice, concise way of getting that information across. You only have about 15 seconds before someone kind of makes up their mind. So it's really important that it's kind of punchy and they get as much as possible out of that time. So after submitting the CV, the next step at most tech companies, including Goldman, is a hacker rank. So that is a timed assignment where you complete either coding or multiple choice questions. The key thing for this is that it's a skill. There's not, without any previous experience to HackerRank, there's not a great correlation between people who are great at coding and people who are great at HackerRank. So the main thing you can do to help yourself is practice. And the good news there is if you go to HackerRank, you can try lots of puzzles yourself. One thing to note is it's not necessarily about code quality. It's more just, do you get the tests to pass? So yeah, just don't focus on kind of the most elegant solution. Just get it all working. And practice definitely as much as you can. So in interviews then, so the next step, let's assume you've done well at the HackerRank. In the interviews, make sure you can convey your soft skills. So that's further examples, hopefully not on your CV, of teamwork and where you can be useful at that firm. And again, definitely don't think it's all about coding. All the soft skills very much come into play. Code not written, and how you find out that actually something doesn't need to be written is all soft skills, and that can make you very, very productive as a developer. It's not just lines of code written. And I'll leave it there.
Thank you, George. Okay, so now the next question is, there is such a wide variety of technical careers and roles out there. So Liz, would you be able to kind of explain to us what career paths are available in technology?
Yeah, so I think James has already mentioned that you don't need to work in a tech firm or a technology role to be technical. You could be working, as an accountant and digitize a part of a repetitive task that you do regularly. If you were looking to move into a more technical role, be it sort of entry level or career switcher, and you're stuck, I think about what you like, what you are good at, and then where does that apply? So for example, if you enjoy helping people and solving problems really quickly, then a support specialist role might be for you. If you really enjoy looking into details and validating that things have been done as expected and work as expected, then you might want to explore becoming a test engineer. If you're interested in cybersecurity and protecting organizations against cyber threats, then information security might be a route that you want to explore. If you're more interested in hardware and how systems speak to each other, then something in the field of DevOps or network engineering might be where you start. If you're interested in holistic system design and working with stakeholders from across an organization, then business analyst and product owner roles might be where you start looking at. And then if you're really interested in programming and building functionality, then you've got software engineering roles, and they can be quite broad in terms of the languages that are used. So think about, is there a particular language that you want to start out in, and use that as your entry point? And then finally, if you're interested in organization and delivery, then you might want to look at project manager or scrum master roles.
Thank you, Liz. Okay, so the final question, which is an open question for all the panel, and I'll take part as well. So, if there's a piece of advice that you'd wished you'd been given when you were starting out with your engineering career, what would it be? And it's an open question for everyone on the panel. And I guess I can start as well. So. I guess from my perspective, when I first started, having done the masters in technology and effectively learning a relatively small amount of Java at the time, I guess the key from my side was the fact that learning, especially at the start of your career, enjoying to do the challenges and doing as much coding as possible was key, but also finding some role models, and especially nowadays online, it's very easy to collaborate and actually find other people to give you feedback on your code and on your solutions in order to develop your skills. So most definitely identifying role models that can give you some good advice, both from a technology perspective as well as a career perspective. Get out to as many events as possible, because the key is to try and meet as many people as you can that are either in the same position as you or are in a position that you want to achieve. Because 100% I ended up, luckily, in my first job meeting, somebody that still to this day I kind of class as a mentor and has helped me throughout my entire career. So effectively getting out there, meeting people that do the job is a big piece of advice that I would give.
I think I echo your comments, Paul, about getting out there and meeting people. I think actually by doing that, you learn about what opportunities are out there, but also people can give you a lot of support, which I think feeds into my key bit of advice of being open-minded and have the courage to think that you can do something. Don't be put off by, I've never done this before, I'm not quite sure what I'm doing here. Like, actually go and speak to people, look at courses online. There are probably similar problems that have been solved before. What can you take from those and apply to it? And just really keep that open mind and get stuck in. It's the best way to learn and start exploring what's out there.
I can extend that a little bit, which is that sometimes the challenges don't have to be technical. So in the same way, ultimately we're here to solve problems. So if through doing a project you can learn more about what that application or code will be used for and how it'll help, that very much makes you a better developer, because you'll build more appropriate solutions in better ways that are more useful or make people more productive. So it doesn't have to be technical, but that if you do want to make it technical, another piece of advice is find a challenge in every project, so you can do things in slightly different ways, try slightly newer technology. possibly not for the higher stakes projects, but it's a great way to kind of implement the very common advice, which is you need to keep on learning. But it's very much, it doesn't have to be a kind of separate something you do kind of in your own time. It shouldn't be. It should be kind of a way, it should be something continuous that you can integrate into your everyday work.
Yeah, I really echo your thoughts on the, something being technically complicated does not actually make it implicitly any more valuable. As when I started off, something I got confused with was, it's really complicated. This is really technical. This must be valuable. This must be cool. But it's all about the context of the problem that you're trying to solve. That's the center, and that should be at the center. It should be your focus for going forward and learning, and how you value your solution going forwards.
Yeah, I mean, I would kind of say as well, there is a huge amount of opportunities out there in technology, and indeed, whether it's working directly for a technology company or for a company that just requires digitization, there is opportunities everywhere, right? So I think as James and George has mentioned, take every chance you can to automate repeatable tasks and look for ways that technology can be used to improve any job that you might do, right? It's always a learning opportunity. And with the amount of online information that you can get, I think Liz has kind of said, somebody out there has potentially already done it, right? So actually learning and utilizing the online resources is key, but I think always there's an opportunity to do it and be proactive. And I always kind of say this in my interviews as well. So you were asked to do your job, build a particular automated process. Did you improve anything else, or did you just deliver your job, right? Because ultimately, the ability to go and be proactive and look for additional opportunities, or maybe to improve another particular area that you weren't specifically asked to do, it says a lot about the individual as well, which is effectively, you're going to continue looking for improvements that can be made throughout the organization and the tech stack. Okay, do we have anything else, I guess, on key bits of advice to add? I suppose one more thing actually on the CVs. I think it was covered very well by George actually, but when I'm looking at a CV, I think ultimately remember when you are interviewed, that primarily is also the piece of paper that will start the questioning, right? Don't feel the need to add filler, but know the stuff that you put on your CVs in depth, right? So if you're going to put that Java, for example, very well, then expect the interviewer to dig deep into that particular topic. But don't feel the need to add filler, because ultimately you might end up having to fend off questions where basically that's not your expertise. So, be honest and effectively expect questions based off your CVs. Okay. All right. Okay. If that's everything, then I would like to thank the panel for giving their insight into how to launch your career in technology. And I hope that we have given you something to think about on the best ways to progress in your career and build your digital skill set. For more information on Goldman Sachs careers, please visit gs.com/careers and sign up to get the information about the office and all the future events at Goldman Sachs Birmingham. To remind you that there is a coffee pop-up at the University of Birmingham in October, and there are many more events to join, including the GSMEA Spotlight on Birmingham on the 28th of October. And with that, I'd like to thank our panel and hope that everyone has found this informative. and thank you for listening.